My uncle and Ramona were having dinner in a restaurant.
Okay.
A fancy place. He wanted to show off to her.
I could go eat Mexican with my wife any day of the week for $35. That's including my beer. You know, I'm 43 years old and I've been married for almost 10 years. And I gotta tell you, it's been the happiest 10 years of my life. One of the best things about getting married itself, besides the wonderful woman that I married, was the fact that I ain't gotta mess with no more. Dating sucks. Dating's for the birds. Most of my life, I was a one-woman kind of guy, you know, because first of all, I didn't like dating. I didn't like that awkward getting to know someone and not really sure what you should do next and trying to impress them and not getting return. You know what I mean? This whole uncertainty of dating is farce. Not to mention everything is always hyper happy, inflated. You know what I mean? You can't really, there's a lot of downtime in life with your emotions and stuff like that. And when you're dating, everything has to be spontaneous and, you know, bubbly, and it's just not like that most of the time. It's almost like having a job interview for the first few months every day. You know what I mean? Every day you talk to them, you got to try to impress them or try to make them like you more and, you know, talk about feelings. And marriage is just so, it's not routine. You don't have to make it routine. But I got to say, when I wake up, I kind of know what to expect now. You know what I mean? I kind of know where my wife is at on pretty much on the same page on a day-to-day basis. And for all that lull, that downtime, we get to just talk about it. You know, we share our victories and our defeats, our boring days and our fun days. So it's just a comfort level for me. Monogamy is something that I've always loved. And besides the craziness of dating itself, there are some crazy people out there, and you have no idea of knowing what people are capable of. A lot of people now use social networking to kind of figure out what's going on, you know? And these dating apps, they get an idea about people based on their profile and stuff. But how much are people really hiding? Who are you really getting to know? Most of the time it's really innocent, but every once in a while, there's a horror story to be told. We got 2 of them today, real life dating horror stories from MJV Animations. Make sure to head on over to their channel, guys. Click subscribe, click the notification bell. And if you like reaction videos, make sure to subscribe to my channel as well. Let's get into the reaction. Dating horror stories.
My uncle, Miguel, had a harrowing experience whilst on a date in Mexico.
Alright.
It was 1980-something, and he was traveling around the country, living the dream.
Yeah.
He was never lucky when it came to love. Still isn't. But whilst just outside Guadalajara, he met a girl called Ramona.
Okay.
According to him, she was young, vivacious, and extremely beautiful.
Alright.
The pair of them went on a date together, and it went really well.
Cool.
As such, my uncle decided to stay in town a bit longer than he originally planned, just so that the 2 of them could have a second date.
She
was apparently a girl worth sticking around for. Not only was she super sexy and witty, she was also charming and sweet.
Now, when you're traveling abroad like that and you meet people, a lot of the times it's just a fling, right? You can develop feelings for someone in a short amount of time or enough interest to make arrangements to see them often. But if you're traveling like far away, like let's say I went to Paris. I'm in South Louisiana, United States, you know. Let's say I went to Paris and met a wonderful French girl. I gotta fly all the way to France to meet this chick, man, or she's gotta come to me. That's some costly stuff, man. Now, let's not even talk about passports and when you really get involved and decide to get married and stuff, there's who's gonna live where? You gotta leave everything you ever loved to go live with them, or they gotta leave everything they ever loved to come to you. That's some complicated stuff, man.
It was only their second date, but he figured, who knows, maybe she's the one.
Okay.
He still wonders if she might have been to this
There's always
day.
a chance.
My uncle and Ramona were having dinner in a restaurant.
Okay.
A fancy place that was out of most people's price range.
Right.
He wanted to show off to her and make it obvious that he was serious about her.
Again, the whole dating, that's another thing. I could go eat Mexican with my wife any day of the week for $35. That's including my beer. You know what I mean? I've dined at some nice restaurants. Now, I love dining at nice restaurants, and I love taking my wife to nice restaurants. But that's not to impress her. That's to enjoy a refined experience with her. You know what I mean? We could go eat Wagyu. Let's just face it. We're not going to restaurants to really enjoy the cuisine, you know, and to experience it. We trying to impress these people when we go on fancy restaurant dates.
The restaurant itself was full, but one table of men in particular stood out to my uncle.
Okay.
They were dressed decadently, but tastelessly.
I'm getting mafia
White
vibes.
Suits, gold chains, sunglasses indoors.
Mm-hmm.
They were making twice as much noise as all of the rest of the diners combined.
Mm-hmm.
Put it this way, it was clear to everyone in there that these guys were narcos.
Right.
Still,
Narcos.
they ignored the men as best they could and sat down for their meal.
Mm-hmm.
The conversation was flowing, and according to my uncle, there was a definite chemistry between him and Ramona.
Okay.
The whole evening, however, the group of narcos were eyeing up my uncle's date.
Mm-hmm.
It was making them both feel a little uneasy.
All right.
So, after dessert, my uncle quickly waves to a waiter for the check. The waiter appears uncomfortable, sweaty.
Uh-oh.
He approaches my uncle and tells him not to worry about the bill. Apparently, their dinner had already been paid for.
Uh-oh.
What are you talking about? Who paid our bill?
I'm getting some bad vibes about this. You know, the uncomfortable situation when someone gives you something is hardly ever 100% gesture of good faith if you haven't interacted with these people. Granted, if you know someone, you know what I mean? It can be a gesture of good faith. But a strange person in a distant place that just outright buys you something, especially if they're eyeballing your girlfriend, I'm getting major creep vibes, man.
My uncle asked. The waiter gestured to the group of narcos.
Unless they're
They were
pimps.
all looking over at him, raising their glasses. This obviously spelled trouble.
Uh-huh.
You could tell just from the way these guys looked that they had something planned.
Uh-oh.
Knowing the type of men they were, most people probably would have stood up and walked out of there as fast as they could,
Right.
not wanting to engage them. My uncle, however, was a proud man, and didn't want to seem weak in front of his date.
Right.
He wasn't about to be shown up by these Pablo Escobar wannabes. He approached them with his chest puffed out, acting as confident as he could. He planned to politely tell them that he didn't need their charity. Before he could say anything, however, one of the men, a guy dressed in all white, asked him a question. "Did you enjoy your dinner with your wife?" "She's not my wife," my uncle replied. "She's my date." "That's lucky for you. She's very pretty." Confused, my uncle simply said, "I want to pay for our food myself. How much do I owe you?" With what my uncle describes as the purest look of soullessness he's ever seen, the man in white says, "No, consider it a goodbye gift, because after this, you'll never see her again."
Wow.
Nobody at the table laughed. All of the men just smiled at my Uncle Miguel. These guys were being serious. My uncle doesn't respond, just walks back to his date and hurries her out of the restaurant.
Bruh, how do you respond to that? So, they're gang members, and they just basically a threat. You know, they basically just threatened either his life or her life. You'll never see her again could either mean, could mean either his life or her life. The likelihood of something bad happening here is very, very high. Do you call the police? It's a foreign place, and it's just a threat. Do you get management involved? If the waiter is scared, it's likely that management won't interact. I really don't know what to do here.
He and Ramona jumped into his car and sped away, leaving only dust clouds in their wake. He continued driving for what must have been 45 minutes through the desolate Mexican countryside, checking his mirrors every few seconds to see if they were being pursued.
Right.
From what he could tell, they had gotten away. Needing to fill up his tank,
Oh, no.
my uncle pulled into a gas station in this barren area. He had no other choice. They were running on fumes.
Right.
As he got out of the car to fill her up, 3 other cars also pulled in,
Dang.
surrounding my uncle's vehicle. They had been followed after all.
Wow, man.
A number of men got out of the cars, aiming guns at my uncle and his date. They then took Ramona, kicking and screaming, threw her in the back of one of the cars, and drove off with her.
Powerless,
There was
man.
nothing my uncle could do to stop them. He had never been so powerless in all his life.
Right.
All he could do was watch as the cars drove over the horizon and out of sight, taking with them any trace that Ramona existed,
Wow.
and any chance of a happy future that my uncle and her could have had together.
God dang.
Whoever the guy in white was, he was right. That night really was the last time my Uncle Miguel saw Ramona. For all he knows, she may have died that very night, or might still be alive today somewhere. Whatever happened to her though, he's sure it doesn't bear thinking about. Things like this happen from time to time in Bandito country. Most of the time, people don't even report these abductions to the police,
What?
terrified of what might happen if they do.
I know law is kind of crazy out there. You know, I've heard that jails in Mexico or prisons in Mexico or like they're almost lawless. You know what I mean? Like there's no regulatory checks and balances system to keep the prisoners safe or in check. Not that in prison systems it's completely regulated. There's a lot that goes unseen. We all know the stories about prisons and stuff, but I think that that they were into some sort of prostitution ring or trafficking. I mean, it's a gang, you know. I mean, it's not to be good. So at first, I was kind of thinking that they might have been pimps, but the way the line of questioning went and the interaction between them at the restaurant, I kind of figured no, it was actually sinister. But being powerless like that, man, it's a horrible feeling. I've been in a few situations where I was completely powerless. Not to anyone, well, to other people, you know, to help other people. Powerless to help other people that were being harmed. And it's a sucky feeling, man. You're overwhelmed with guilt. At the same time, you really realize that there's nothing that you could have done, you know? It's horrible. Next story.
When I was 22, I lived in a semi-hip, semi-sketchy part of Brooklyn,
Okay.
known as South Williamsburg.
All right.
I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with a lesbian roommate named Tony, who
Okay.
I didn't get along with very well.
Didn't get
And
along.
I regularly went on dates with guys I met online. Most of these dates were nothing to write home about. But then there was the time I met Dave.
Okay.
Dave and I agreed to meet for a few drinks at my favourite bar, which was called Barcade.
Hey, games.
This bar was amazing, because
Yeah.
it had dozens of American microbrews on tap, and because the entire large space was filled with 80s arcade games, which were all still $1 a play.
What?
I'm talking Miss Pac-Man, Galaga, Space Invaders 1942,
Yeah.
Tapper, Gauntlet, you name it.
Warrior needs food badly. Man, the old school arcade games. Yo, when I was a kid, I played Pac-Man at a local Pizza Hut, okay? And this Pac-Man wasn't stationed like these arcade games. The uprights, it was like a tabletop, okay? And you had a trackball that you could play with. And you could actually do 2-player Pac-Man at one time. It was cool. You could sit across from your date or whatever and play Pac. It was so awesome, man. But these little places like this, there's a lot of them in Seattle. When I'd go to the conventions and stuff like that, I'd hang out at some of these bars. And, man, they're just a good time, dude. A great time to hang out with friends or even a date, man. But now, these bars, they're not $1 a play, though. You go broke in one of these babies fast.
What I didn't realise is the decision to meet at this particular bar possibly saved my life.
Wow, okay.
So I met him at Barcade, ordered a beer, cashed in $2 in quarters, and challenged him to a few games.
Dave's crazy, apparently.
We started out having fun, playing in turns and cheering the other one on.
Was he competitive?
But after a few rounds of Punch-Out, he started getting antsy.
Yeah.
A lot of, do you want to take this back to my place, and let's get out of here, etc.
Oh, okay.
I blew him off and didn't think anything of it at first.
We having fun, man. On one first date, we having fun. You already invited me back to your place? Did I find you on Tinder or on eHarmony? It really all depends. I guess it really all depends on where you found him at, what dating app, you know?
Since I still had quite a few quarters left and just thought he was anxious to get into my pants.
Right.
I finished my beer and ordered a second, which is usually my limit for sobriety, seeing as I'm quite small.
Yeah. Especially on
Then
a
my
date,
favorite
too.
game opened up. I excitedly ran for it, put a quarter in, and I sucked. I just couldn't time anything right.
Right.
I kept missing my cues and didn't make it past the first
Drugged.
round.
Wow.
This was weird, since I pretty much lived on this game.
Right.
And beat anyone I challenged on it.
Got drugged.
When I mentioned with wounded pride that I'm normally not this bad after only one beer, he started to get even more incessant. No, seriously. Let's go. This place is too crowded for good conversation. Let's go somewhere quieter.
At least he tried to use a reason.
I didn't understand, since we'd only been there for about half an hour, and I was interested in having some fun.
Right.
But I also wanted to get to know him first. I again insisted on using my quarters, of which I only had 2 left. I put another one in the game, determined to kick some ass. And this time, not only could I not make it past the first round, but I had trouble even holding on to my joystick correctly.
Wow, yep. Drugged,
This
baby.
is when I started putting 2 and 2 together.
Mm-hmm.
I realized I was in a really bad situation, and I needed to play it cool.
Yeah.
So I did what any normal 22-year-old would do. I excused myself to the bathroom,
There you go.
and proceeded to flip the fuck out. I called my roommate and begged her to come and get me.
Right.
We only lived a few blocks away, but she was at her girlfriend's house in Park Slope,
Oh,
about
dang.
a 15-minute cab ride.
Oh.
I was in the middle of a date. I begged her and offered to pay for not only their date, but also the cost of the cab, and finally she agreed to come and get me.
I mean, if you think that you're in a situation, it wouldn't be a bargaining piece. This is your roommate, okay? It's kind of like neighbors. We don't have to be really, really good friends. You gotta know when to say, okay, I'm needed. This is a human respect thing. You know what I mean? I think I've been drugged by my date, and I'm in a public place, and I'm scared that I pass out. Help me. You know, oh, so you gonna cover my cab charge? Are you kidding me? Are we really negotiating on whose $15 are gonna get spent here? Come get me right now, man. What the hell?
While I waited, I just hung out in the bathroom, getting more and more freaked out,
Yep.
losing more and more of my fine motor skills as the minutes went by.
Man.
As women came into the bathroom, I kept asking them to check if he was still out there. For the first 20 minutes, he was.
Wow.
After that, people kept coming back and saying he was gone. I still didn't feel safe leaving the bathroom though.
Right.
I stayed there, on the phone with my friend in North Carolina, waiting for Tony to show up. After an hour, she walked in and carried me out of the bar. I
Thank
was able
goodness.
to walk with assistance, so it was more like a leaning carry, if you can imagine that.
You should go
She
to
was
the
still
doctor.
upset with me interrupting her date though. So, instead of taking me back to the apartment, she took me to a gay bar nearby, the Metropolitan.
No, that's not a good
I
idea.
got parked on a chair for the next hour while she partied with some friends, I think. Honestly, my memory of this is a little hazy.
Right.
I just know we were there. All I remember next is waking up in my bed in the middle of the night, but having crazy cramps and spasms all over my body,
Wow.
and not being able to control it.
I would have gone to the doctor,
Then,
man.
I don't remember anything else until the next morning, where my only remaining symptom was a really bad headache.
Yeah.
I never heard from Dave again,
Thank goodness.
although I did get a phone call 2 days later from a blocked number, where a woman yelled curses at me for 30 seconds before threatening to kill me and hanging up.
Apparently.
I don't know why, but I'm convinced the two events are connected.
Yeah.
Either way, that's my story. I was drugged, but not raped. and I am forever thankful.
Wow. I've told this story before too, y'all, but I was drugged before. Yeah, little old me. Sitting at a bar, just a short version of it. Sitting at a bar in Seattle. First time I ever been to Seattle, traveling alone. You know, telling my little story to the bartender about how I was this successful YouTuber doing things, you know, traveling, and apparently someone tried to take advantage of the situation that I was traveling alone, because I had pretty much divulged a bunch of my information, and I ended up going to the bathroom at one point, apparently leaving my food and drink, you know, and apparently something was slipped in it, because by the end of my drink, or on my second drink, I can't remember now, I started feeling drunker than I had ever felt before, you know. I mean, I was losing it. I was feeling like I was going to pass out, kind of, and not pass out like, you know, like I had took some bad medicine or I was gonna faint. Pass out from being inebriated. So I didn't know what was happening. I didn't even remember paying for my meal and my drink to the bartender. The next day I had to go ask if I paid my tab. But I got in the hotel. I got in the elevator to the hotel, got into my room, and I blacked out. When I woke up in the morning, I still had all my clothes on, shoes, everything. I just fell in the bed. I'm lucky that I made it to my room. It's crazy. But if you know that you've taken something, it's very important to go to the hospital, because you don't know what it could be. What if you have an allergic reaction? What if it's medicine that can affect you mentally? Not that getting your stomach pumped after about an hour or so, like she had to wait, is going to get the medicine out your system, but they could give you something to counteract the bad effects, you know. No telling, man. That's what I'm saying, bruh. I love being married. You ain't gotta go through any of this stuff. It's crazy. Y'all be safe out there. Find love, but find it carefully, okay? Make sure to go check out MJV Animations. Link's gonna be right there, as well as a couple other videos that I reacted to from him. Thanks so much for watching. As always, this is Zueljin signing off, and we'll see you next time.